Hollywood, they sell you the lie that you can have a purely physical relationship. That never works. And I remember a guy I worked with, a friend of mine, he wasn't a Christian, he was an agnostic. So we would go round and round, but he ended up divorced and he had a relationship with this girl and he was like, oh, it's just physical. And I was like, dude, it's not gonna work. I was like, that'll never work. I'll give it a month before one of y'all gets super attached and it ruins the whole thing. Sure enough, he got super attached and was heartbroken when she decided to leave it. So God made it for a specific purpose, and when you go against God's purpose of doing it, you don't ever have anything remotely successful. So, today, our title is Meet Cute. What does that even mean? So, I know you know what it means. Ironically, the first time I heard this phrase was in the movie The Holiday, which Mom was commanded by the Lord not to watch. But that term, meet cute, is actually a fairly old phrase, first appearing in the 1930s and refers to a situation where two characters meet for the first time in a way that is considered adorable or entertaining. So in the movie The Holiday, the guy who uses the phrase is an old Hollywood screenwriter, and he actually describes the incident of the movie that was first written in. So I forget the name of the movie, but the point is the guy goes into a store and the woman goes into a store and they both go to the counter and the guy says, I just need bottoms for the PJs. I don't need a top. And the lady's like, I just need a top, I don't need the bottoms. And then they look at each other and that's the meet cute. Yes.
I was going to say, we had one in our life when we first met.
Y'all did too, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You and Mom working together.
Well, I'm thinking it was on a Friday night. Some coworkers were having a cookout, and she was there. First time we all saw her in civilian clothes, and all the guys were like, "Wow!" But I had an ally jacket on, and that's when she came up. She said, "Ally," and she traced it on my jacket. She went, "Ally, what's that?" That was a meet cute. She had an ally. What's that?
That is a meet cute. In the movie Serendipity, it's kind of similar where I don't know if y'all have ever seen that movie. It's John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale.
It's a good movie.
It's a good one. They meet because they both go after one set of cashmere gloves at the department store. That's how they meet. Same thing. So that's what a meet cute is. So even though Mom doesn't watch The Holiday because of all the fornication and such, which it's tame by like today's standards for sure, because it actually doesn't show anything. But you know what happens. It actually illustrates the point of the meet cute quite well. And the Lord can speak to us through anything if we're willing to listen. How many times have we talked about Star Wars, Barb? Where you can, I'm always amazed at how much time Hollywood inadvertently proves the Word of God. I mean, they rail against, morality, and they rail against, established precepts that the Lord gave us, and yet they write stories that prove it.
Yes.
All the time. I mean, you look at the movie, you look at the show like Breaking Bad. We always say sin takes you further than you ever wanted to go. That show is literally, that man's life is completely destroyed because of his decision to start cooking meth. And so it's like, it's amazing how they actually sell these same truths, but try to deny them at the same time in their own lives. It just baffles me. Or like with Star Wars, with Anakin Skywalker who becomes Darth Vader, literally hate destroys him, fear and hate destroy him, and he turns him into a monster. Bitterness and everything rots his soul to the point where he's no longer even human. And so that's essentially, that's a truth, that's sin. Now, his prescription for it, George Lucas' prescription for it is not biblical because they have no prescription outside that works. But it's amazing how when you're a Christian, you can look at something and be like, oh, wow. And the Lord can be like, hey, that's what sin does.
Yes.
So it's still, it just floors me that is the way it goes now. So I don't think everyone knows the full story of how the Lord brought Jennifer and I together. And like I said, Mom wanted us to share with everyone today how when you rely on the Lord for a wife or a husband, it will turn out to be a love story very reminiscent of Ruth and Boaz. So this is Jennifer and I's meet cute story. Now, before I get into the actual meat of the story, we got to go back in time. So I want to start at the beginning. I was raised to see marriage as the end goal of dating. My parents did not encourage me to go out there and have fun like some. They taught me to treat finding a wife as a serious thing. And that is exactly what I did. I never dated just for the sake of dating, and every potential girlfriend was filtered through the lens of, does this person have the potential to be my wife? If I couldn't realistically see myself marrying the person I might be interested in, I would not date them. And that is the God's honest truth. And I remember in high school, Dad, gave us advice, 90% or probably 98% of high school romances never go beyond high school. And so you just waste your time, you get hurt, and you get all the emotions of a serious relationship, and then it never goes anywhere. So he would encourage James and I both to just enjoy being young. And so that's what I tell people today, young people today. David, I think I told you the same thing. I've told Colton, I don't know if I told Ben yet. Now you're hearing it for the first time, Ben and Olivia. Is enjoy being young and don't be burdened with serious relationships that most likely won't go anywhere. I mean, how many of us are still friends with anybody from high school that we see on a regular basis? It's like, how many friends do you have in high school? Probably like 20 people.
Yeah.
You didn't have more?
A couple of close friends.
James and I had like 100 friends. It was amazing. We added it up one time. We don't talk to but literally a handful of those people today. I mean, so most of the people you go to high school with, you don't ever see again.
No, that's true.
And that's just a fact of life, because life takes you in all different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And so, truth be told, a lot of those people we probably don't need to hang out with anymore. But anyway, so now an approach like this does come with some harsh realities. I won't lie to you. You'll have much fewer dates as a consequence, which I most certainly did. Had very few dates. It also probably didn't help that I had crazy high standards and wasn't willing to settle. Needless to say, there was a lot of lonely years from high school until I met Jennifer. But I remember James worked at American Eagle in the mall. It was when I was in college. I think that was like 08 and 09, somewhere in that time frame. Yeah, 07, 08, 09. And his manager there at the time, they'd been married for like 7 years. And so I will never forget this because it impacted me so much at the time. And James too. But he had married somebody that he had just been, friends with. And he didn't love her in a romantic sense. But they ended up having kids. And so, at this point, they'd been married like 7, 8, 9 years. And he just didn't love her because he never loved her that way. And yet he didn't want to abandon her because obviously they had children. And he was just stuck. And I was like, that has got to be a fate worse than like prison. I mean, you've created your own prison in that sense. And I was like, I will never, because he was getting older, I think is why, and he decided, well, we get along, we might as well just do this. And so, and then he regretted it for, the rest of his life. I was like, I will never let loneliness get to the point where I settle for something that's not what God wants. So, even if you don't have a lot of dates, youngsters, you need to wait on the Lord and do not settle, because settling can get you in trouble. All right. So I was on the right track, but there were some lessons that I needed to learn to be ready for marriage. Like I said before, I didn't date much and only had 2 girlfriends prior to getting married. 1, 2. That's it. Not a lot. Was not a ladies' man.
And the length of time was short.
Yes, the length of time for those 2 was very, very short. One of those relationships was a 2-year-long saga that ended with us going our separate ways. And by 2 years, I mean, I was consider us dating. She did not. We did not call each other boyfriend and girlfriend, but we did everything that boyfriend and girlfriends do. We went to the movies, we went to dinner. I essentially was her boyfriend without her being willing to say that, and I did that for 2 years. It was miserable. So that particular girlfriend ended up, because we went our separate ways, she ended up coming back in my life in spring of 2009 and wanted to give our relationship another chance. But I was angry at her for good reason. I'd been strung along for 2 years, and how she had treated me, and I told her that she had her chance and she blew it. And this is a funny story about that. So we went to a movie, and then we went to get some food after, so we just went to Waffle House because it was like 10 o'clock at night. And so we were not together, and she had made that very clear to me at this point. So I'm not paying. That's you. You know, you do you. If you want me to pay, you're gonna have to date me. And so we're at Waffle House, and the waitress brought one ticket. I said, "Oh no, you gotta divide it up." And she was like, "Oh, okay." Well, this old guy in the booth next to us paid for her meal, and I was so mad because they were kind of teasing me about it. I was like, "Hey, it's the age of women's liberation. You know, she should be buying my meal." I was joking around. He paid for it. And I was so furious. And she was over there laughing. She thought it was hilarious. I wanted to punch that guy right in his face. I was like, "You don't even know, pal. You don't know." But I didn't. He was old. And he was like, "In my day, we would pay for him." I was like, "Well, dude, you know how much money I spent on this one?" I was like, "You don't even know." So yes, I was hurt. And that is when I learned my first big lesson in marriage journey. And that is pride will keep you single. That I owe that bit of wisdom to one of the dumbest men I've ever met. But as the saying goes, a broke clock is right twice a day. And Dad was there for that when we were out to lunch with him in particular. And Dad can attest to his stupidity.
Yes.
But boy, he was on the money with that one when he said it. And I knew he was right because I had just when she had talked to me, it was on the campus at KSU. And it had only been like a month or two since that had happened, and we were talking about it at lunch, and that's when he said, "Pride will keep you single." And immediately I was like, "Ooh, yes it did." So if you're not willing to forgive, to apologize even when you're not in the wrong, or willing to set yourself to the side for the good of your spouse, or in that case, a potential spouse, you will be proud, you'll be justified, and you will be alone, as I was. So to make a relationship work, self has to die and be replaced by the two acting as one, and that is very hard to do. Needless to say, I regretted that decision as I watched that girl go on to become engaged and married within a year of that conversation. So, you know, what?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Why should you apologize when you're not in the wrong?
Because sometimes apologizing even when you're not in the wrong is better for the relationship.
Yes.
So
Get that right, David.
it's not that you don't want to get your spouse to do the right thing, but sometimes you need to put peace between y'all ahead of you being right, especially if it's something petty. I'm trying to think of a good example between us. I can't think of one off the top of my head all of a sudden. Although we've gotten into some fights over really
I look at it
stupid
like
stuff.
this. You can win battles and end up losing the war.
Yeah.
And in this case, you destroy the relationship because you have to be right. And honestly, if we look at the idea that I need to make this right just for the sake of the relationship, God will deal with the other person over time. You'll meld together, you'll become more consistent, more one.
And if you put your spouse first, the Lord will deal with the other one.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, if you apologize, the other will apologize and see where they went wrong. So, trying to put your marriage before yourself will always come out better than if you're trying to be right all the time. All right. All right. So it was after that that I entered what I'll call the wilderness years. These consisted of an 8-year period where I did not have a girlfriend and went on very few dates. Needless to say, that was a very tough time for a young man looking to establish himself in the world, because during that period with that crazy girl, I dated one other person, and that lasted 2 months. So the extent of my dating experience was 2 months of a relationship and 2 years of a pseudo relationship. So not a lot of experience in the dating world. It was also a time marked by depression, which led to some poor decisions. I struggled with alcohol and pornography for many years, but thankfully the Lord is good, and even in the midst of our darkest moments, He is always with us and never leaves us. The truth of the matter is that I was not fit for the Lord to trust me with a wife yet. I needed to be prepared to receive who God had for me, and no one loves the pruning process. I am no exception. Who loves to be pruned? Anybody love getting pruned? Pruning is not fun. Thankfully, it was during these wilderness years that I got the revelation of the cross and slowly started turning things, and the Lord slowly started turning things around. And I know y'all all heard how Mom got it, and then James and I got it, and it was in that time period. And so, not everything changed overnight. In fact, much of my life did not change for many years. But my relationship with the Lord got better. These things that, like alcohol and pornography that were holding me back, got pruned away. Alcohol, instantly. I remember the day that it just completely was like, boom, gone. I had no desire to drink ever again. And pornography was more of a slow process, which is why you shouldn't look at it, young men. Not calling anybody out, or women. I'll touch on that later. All right. The next lesson the Lord taught me was that I couldn't earn His favor. An important part of the story is that I did not have sex before I got married. I was a virgin, which is very difficult in today's society. I vividly remember talking to the Lord and complaining about my situation and saying to Him that I deserved a wife because I had saved myself, and saying to Him that I deserve it because I had saved myself. I had done things the right way. I deserved it. That's what I was complaining to the Lord about. And the Lord spoke to me instantly and said, "Why?" And I was like, "Oh." And then He went on to say, "You've done what's required." Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Oh, snap. I've done the bare minimum. The law of the Lord is what's required." That's just to get in the door, essentially. I mean, that'd be like an employee who, his whole job is just to sweep the floor and doesn't do anything else to help the company, doesn't clean anything else, just sweeps the floor, does the very base minimum required to keep his job, and then wanting to be employed a month. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
That's a good description.
Yeah. And I was like, and I remember because I was walking out the front door when I was complaining to the Lord mentally, and that's when it hit me. I literally stood there on the front steps. And I was like, oh my word, I don't deserve anything. So that's when I learned you can't earn God's favor in any facet of life through your own efforts. He will not reward your own efforts. Throughout this whole time, I still wanted to be married, and though I was lonely, I still wouldn't date just to not be lonely. That's a key component, is even if you're struggling with loneliness or whatever, don't give up, because trying to do it yourself will not work. Now, I did stick my guns, and I still wouldn't date unless I really thought the person was a potential wife. Now, although I realized I couldn't earn anything, I thought, well, maybe I'll be able to help the Lord along. So I tried dating apps, hanging out with different people in an effort to find a wife. Then in October of 2015, during our prophecy conference, Bill Flynn was preaching on making idols in our lives. And it occurred to me that I had built marriage into an idol in my own life. So the next lesson was clear. I had taken something that God wants for us and made it into an idol. I was seeking an outcome more than I was seeking the Lord. And so I had built marriage up into this grand thing and was so focused on finding somebody to marry that I had lost sight of what the purpose of marriage really was, and lost sight of the Lord to some extent. So that was the next big lesson. And then in the spring of 2016, I finally learned the last lesson in the wilderness, and the only way to really find a spouse is to let the Lord bring you a spouse. I prayed and I told the Lord, and this was in February of 2016, if you want me to get married, you'll bring her to me. If not, whether I go by the way of the rapture or the way of the grave at 90 years old, I'm going to trust you no matter what. And I was serious. I said, if I have to die alone, by myself, in a nursing home, I was like, I'm following you no matter what. I'm done trying to do it on my own. So I canceled all my subscriptions to the dating websites. I was on Match.com and Christian Mingle. And I stopped going out with different social groups because my buddy Jonathan was, also trying to find somebody. We ended up hanging out with all these small groups from Passion City Church and all this other stuff. And none of it ever worked out. And I was visiting other churches. In fact, when Dad and Mom came here for the first Sunday, I was at Canton First Baptist at the college group, basically trying to meet somebody. And then we came here. I never went back there. But, so after I did all that, I never felt better. It was literally like a burden had just been lifted off of me. And nothing in my life had actually changed, except for now I was truly resting in Christ and walking in His peace. And I'm telling you what, it was a whole different story. This is where Jennifer and I's story really begins. So, it was in March, late February, early March, that I made that commitment to really trust the Lord. And on April 1st, Jennifer moved to Georgia. What most people may not know is that Jennifer moved to Georgia from Long Island, New York with her husband. What is really interesting about Jennifer's story is that she had wanted to move to Georgia for years, but never quite knew exactly why. Didn't know why. She said, she didn't want to move to Florida. She knew she didn't want to stay in Long Island, but she didn't want to go to Florida, and she didn't want to go to North Carolina where some of the other people that she knew had gone. She was like, I just want to go to Georgia. So with no explanation, her husband worked at Costco at the time, and after waiting for over a year for a transfer, Costco gave them 1 week to move down, and they moved down. And we'll get to more details about her marriage in a second, but first we'll get to our meet cute. You see, Jennifer from Long Island just so happened to go work at the Regions Bank right down from our office. While I was getting ready for work that day, I was trying to figure out what to wear and was torn between two shirts, one that was older and one that was newer. I went to the newer one because I thought to myself, you never know who you might meet, and that is the God's honest truth. I legit thought that morning. It was a Cam Newton shirt. It was brand new, and it looked good. Now they're old and wore out. All right, I walked in the bank, and there she was working at the desk where I normally sat and balanced the checkbook. And we instantly had a connection between us, but I noticed the ring on her finger, so I decided to figure out if she was married or simply engaged. Because if she was married, I was going to be like, well, whatever. But if she was engaged, I was like, I'll break engagement. That's not marriage. But unfortunately, she was. So now, Jennifer didn't go around looking for love. Unbeknownst to me, the whole reason they were moving down here was to start over due to her husband's infidelity, and there'll be more on that later. It wasn't long before I found out that she was married, so I just chalked it up to bad luck and went on with life. Now, being that I was not perfect and did find her highly attractive, I will admit I did indulge in flirting with her whenever I had to go to the bank. I even convinced her to let me quote her home and auto insurance since I sold PNC insurance at the time. Wait a second, I think I flipped too much. All right. On one occasion, Jennifer had come to the office to sign paperwork, and Dad actually told me to watch out for her because she liked me. And I thought he was crazy and was completely oblivious to the fact that she actually did. And all the ladies at the bank, they were not oblivious and knew Jennifer had a crush on me. They would call Jeff her father-in-law and make jokes about it.
But they never said that to my face, so I had no idea.
Why would we?
Yeah. So Jennifer remembers one day Dad coming into the branch and talking about Dixon and wanting to fix up a house up there so the whole family could vacation up there. Jennifer specifically remembers saying to herself that day, boy, I wish that was me. She wanted a marriage that was built on love and trust, but didn't have it. So life carried on. Then in mid-September, Jennifer found out she would be transferred to the regions across town, which I never used, starting October 1st. So she decided to text me and let me know she was being transferred and that we should get together for a coffee to celebrate my birthday and say goodbye with my last, with her last few days at the Canton Ranch. And so that's when I knew that maybe Dad was right. How often is Dad right? I was like, because I was like, "Ooh, this seems a little personal." And I was like, that's not good. So I originally said no, but that if she wanted to bring her husband, then we could, but she totally kiboshed that idea. After a couple of days texting back and forth, she finally wore me down, and we went for coffee, which turned into lunch because I was hungry, and Firehouse Subs is right next door to Starbucks in Canton. So I was hungry. So then she proceeded to unload her entire life story on me. So her parents, they had a very toxic relationship, and they were separated for 3 whole years before they got divorced. And they finally got divorced when Jennifer was only 13 years old, which had a bigger impact on her than I think she even realized at the time. So due to that, when she was 14, she started dating the guy that eventually became her husband. And because,
He was older than her.
yeah, he was 3 years older than her. He was 17, she was 14.
He was 17, she was 14.
What did I say?
She was 17.
Oh, yeah, he was 17, she was 14. And because she was not raised as a Christian and legit only knew the world's way of doing things, she started having sex at 14 with this guy. He was her first. So, like everyone else she knew, she quickly had a bond with him that should not have been created. And she ended up cleaving to him because of the trouble at home, since he represented some semblance of love and stability. Even as poor of a semblance as he was more stable than her own parents. And when I'm talking, they hated each other. And Ellen still hates Jim, and he's been gone for 4 years now. It's very sad. Another lesson for another day. In reality, he wasn't any of those things and had cheated on her almost continuously from early on, which constantly hurt her, as you can imagine. I mean, for the first 3 years of their relationship, he didn't tell anybody he was dating her. And since he was older, he went to college, and I know he partied and lived life as a single man, and you can go where you can take that for what it's worth, without telling anybody about her. And so she was just left, back home, alone. So, to make matters worse, when she was older, she was groomed by a coworker who made a pass at her on her 18th birthday. So this guy was a predator. And that led to a toxic sexual relationship that left her empty and embarrassed. And I know she's shared some of that with you ladies, but just know, and I have nicknames for these two guys. I won't share them because they're not good. But I have no respect for either of them, very little respect for her ex-husband. But that guy was a true predator. Her ex-husband was just around her. This guy legit groomed her for a full year until she turned 18. So, young ladies, you've got to be aware that there are a lot of bad men out there with bad intentions.
Yes.
And they will take advantage whenever they can. So she eventually married her boyfriend against her own instincts and the advice of her father and multiple friends. It didn't take long to realize her mistakes, since he proceeded to cheat on her just 2 weeks after they got back from their honeymoon. And this was the backdrop that prompted the move to Georgia. She thought if they moved away to somewhere new, it would all get better. That doesn't work, because it's a heart condition. So no matter where you put the heart, in which part of the country or which part of the world, you still got the same old crappy heart that you were born with. So needless to say, this was a lot to take in. In my mind, I was torn over the whole situation, and I needed some advice. So I reached out to my friend Jonathan and let him know about the whole situation. He said, "I know you like her, but you know that she's married and you know what the Lord wants you to do. And I knew he was right. So I decided I would write Jennifer a letter because I wanted to tell her that we couldn't keep talking. And I also wanted to know if what she told me was the truth. Because honestly, you don't know. I really didn't know if she was just, I felt like it was the truth, but I didn't really know. Because I didn't know her that well. And so I thought, you know what? I gotta do what the Lord wants me to do. I'm gonna write this letter. How she responds will tell me everything I need to know about who she really is. So I'm gonna read you what I wrote. And she had invited me to a concert, and she was waiting for my response. And I told her, I said, that was a Wednesday night that I wrote this. That Thursday morning, I said, let me know when I have your undivided attention. And she was all, yay! And then I dropped this on her. So, all right, it says, Dear Jennifer, I put a lot of thought into what I'm about to say, and I want you to know that it's not a reflection of how I feel towards you or that I'm judging you in any way. Based on all the current factors, I'm going to have to ask you not to contact me for anything other than matters related to your insurance policies. I would prefer that you use my business phone number when you need to contact me from now on. I know it sounds harsh, and I don't want it to, but I have to do what's right regardless of how I feel or how you feel. And the only way to do this is to limit our relationship to a strictly professional one. I don't fault you for feeling the way you do. I'm just standing on the outside looking in, so I don't know the kind of true emotional pain that you're experiencing. I can tell from our conversation yesterday that you've been mistreated by people, including your husband in the past, and that those scars run deep. Believe me when I say that the last thing I want to do is mistreat you or wound you emotionally in any way. I want you to be happy, and that's why I have to do this. Anything less than wholeheartedly respecting your marriage would be mistreating you. You're worth more than clandestine meetings and secret rendezvous. You're worth more than half a real relationship. You deserve better than that. You deserve a happy marriage that will last until as long as we both shall live. You deserve the best I can give you, and I can't give you my best by succumbing to temptation. And this is the best I can do for you. For me as a follower of Christ, as a man of integrity, I have to say no to our relationship going anywhere beyond the bounds of you as my client. I like you too much to just be a friend. I can't take the pain of being in that position anymore at this point in my life. I would encourage you and Kevin to get marriage counseling, and Mom and Dad could actually help you all in that regard. I know you're not a religious person, but I sincerely encourage you to give your heart to Jesus because he is the only one that can truly heal your heart, your broken heart. He's real, he loves you, and he will change your life if you will let him. He can even fix your marriage. If you're not sure where to start to find him, I would suggest Joseph Prince Ministries on TV and his podcast. Pastor Prince is a very sound teacher and explains things very well, and you can always talk to Dad about any questions you have about the Bible. I'm sorry if this has hurt you. I want you to know that I'm not rejecting you as a person. I'm rejecting the situation. Perhaps we could have been a happy couple under different circumstances, perhaps even married. It's just that I have a responsibility to do what's right, even if it hurts. Please accept this as my last personal correspondence with you. I wish you all the best. Your friend, Robbie. That's what I sent her. And then I heard nothing for hours. And I was on pins and needles. And what happened was, when Jennifer read the letter, she was on her lunch break, and it devastated her. And you'll see why. It took her 3 hours to write a response.
They had to write between clients.
So finally, she just sends me a text message back. Because I'm like, I don't know how she's going to respond. I thought maybe she'd be like, F you. And then I would be like, okay, well now I know it. It was all a big sham. I'll move on. This is what she said. Robbie, I just wanted to start out by saying I respect everything you said to me in your letter. I won't reach out to you unless you mess my quote up again next year, which I did mess it up. On a serious note, I'm sorry that this happened. My intentions were never like that. The letter you wrote was probably the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me because it is true. The first time I saw you when you came into the bank, I honestly didn't even want to show you my rings that I was married. You looked like one of those guys in the movies that I've always dreamt of. That's right, ladies. Movie star. After talking you over time and seeing you, you actually gave me the butterflies. Getting to know you, you are the most kind, respectful, true to yourself man that I know. I've only known you a couple of months now, but Kevin isn't even half the man you are. You are that guy in the world that every woman wants. And honestly, I like you a lot, and it sucks not being able to have that. You will find that one person you have waited and saved the most important thing in life for. The way your dad talks about your mom and their relationship, that's the kind of relationship people look up to. You will be that man like your dad whenever you find her. Reading your letter actually made me cry. Most likely why? Because it is so true. You kept asking me yesterday, why would I stay? And I kept answering, I don't know. It isn't because I thought I could change him. I guess because I was so young and didn't know anything else really. My parents were divorced, so I had a lot of drama between my parents, stuck in the middle and everything, and still am. Yes, I know I'm mistreated and taken advantage of. That's why we probably need help. Not only my marriage, but for me. You're a really strong person on the inside and out. You stay true to your belief, and it will lead you to be the best person you can be. And that wrecked me, because every girl I dated or was interested in, none of them really saw me. None of them appreciated me. And I knew right there that she saw what was in me, and she really appreciated it. So, and in fact, I actually was in Marietta doing some prospecting, and my mind was not in selling insurance. And so I ended up going to my buddy Jonathan's house while he was at work. He had given me a key, and I sat there on the couch and cried for an hour because I was depressed. You know, it was this beautiful girl, can't have her, gotta go on with the Lord, and it was sad. So 2 days later, on a Friday, she broke her word and wrote me an email and said that she hated the situation and that she hated that we couldn't be together, even though she knew that she was not the normal girl I would go out with, since she wasn't religious and has tattoos. So, yeah, that was what she said. And if any of you are wondering about tattoos, ask Jennifer. She regrets every single one. So, don't get them. But I digress. So, you know, we were only supposed to correspond about business matters, and here she is bringing it up again. So I responded to her and told her that she had every right to leave her husband from a biblical and legal point of view, but she had to decide that for herself and not consider me at all. I was like, you have to go into it thinking that we could never be together. And if you can make that decision with that in mind, that's fine, but that's how you have to approach the decision. And then I didn't hear anything for the entire weekend. Friday, you know, end of the day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and heard nothing. So not hearing a response, it did get the better part of me, and I needed to give her, I needed her to give me a check for her own homeowner's insurance. So I decided to go to the bank branch in Riverstone she had been transferred to and see what she had to say. Because I was like, I didn't hear anything. And this was actually during the time of our prophecy conference in 2016. And so I think y'all knew something was off. I know James did.
We did.
James knew something was off with me, but he didn't know what.
I knew something.
And Mom knew something was off with me too, but she didn't know what either. So I go to the bank to see what she had to say, and she was shocked when I walked through the door. She couldn't think or anything and was visibly shaking. When I got to her hands were like this. And I told her we needed to talk, and so we decided to meet at Starbucks again. And we talked for 4 hours, and we talked about everything. And I told her in many respects she was perfect for me because she was a blank slate, since she didn't have any bad theology to unlearn. That was one of the problems with dating all those girls from or not really dating, because I didn't only went on a date with one of them, but 2 of them. But that, they coming from Passion City Church, they had all this bad theology, and it's like, so dating a Christian girl, it was hard to find somebody who actually believed the Word of God, and it was, so I was like, I didn't really want to deal with that. And so, talking to Jennifer, she was like a sponge. She wanted to absorb whatever information I gave her, and she just believed it. She didn't question things. She was a blank slate. So I didn't find out until later, but she had actually talked to her husband about leaving him and going to get counseling. So that after that Friday email, that's exactly what she did. And she actually called several counselors, and he didn't originally want to go, but then he realized she was serious. And so he decided he relented. But every counselor she tried booking couldn't see it or didn't take insurance. I mean, just every single door just shut. And so, so she decided she was done and that counseling probably wouldn't change anything given his track record. So she told me that she had decided to leave her husband, and that's when I realized I was in deep at that point. And so, she wanted to tell, she texted me and said, hey, I want to talk to you about this. And I was like, all right, meet me at Belk, because I had to find a belt, a new belt. So I'm belt shopping while she's telling me all this, and in my mind I'm like, oh snap, I have stepped in it now, I'm in deep, this woman's getting divorced, and is this like right? Now I'm like really panicking. So, mind you, I didn't know anything about what was going on, or mind you, no one else knew what was going on at this point. None of my friends, none of my family, nobody had a clue. So she met the divorce lawyer on October 15th. And I knew she was going, and Dad and I went to the bank to make deposits or whatever, and she didn't work there anymore at this point. She was at the other branch, and so she happened to be there. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're here. And then, so I saddled up beside her and I said, meet me at Books A Million in 30 minutes, because I wanted to hear what was going on. And so, I'm still really nervous about the whole thing. And I've been pretty panicky at this point. Because I had no idea how anything was going to work out, or if I was even doing the right thing, because, this is a delicate situation. But when I saw her come around the corner of the bookshelf at Books A Million, I instantly knew she was the one, and everything was going to be okay. I'm telling you, it was a switch in my brain that just went like that, and it was like, peace. And I knew, and that's funny, because all those years, I remember forgetting, Dad and I were moving furniture one time. We were on the road, we were listening to John Tesh, his radio program, and John Tesh was citing this study, and it was like 95% of men knew that the woman that became their wife was going to be their wife from the very first date. And I was like, that's insane, how is that true? And so, because I never felt that way. And so, I started asking people, and I remember we were having this conversation at the office, and Dad was like, oh, you're thinking too much, He was like, don't be so, basically don't be such a romantic, just be open to, whoever. And I said, well, when did you know you wanted to marry Mom? He's like, well, basically from the moment I met her. And then I was like, Greg, when did you know you wanted to marry Melanie? And he was like, the moment I met her at the bank. And I was like, or their first date, he had to ask her 3 times before she finally said yes. And then I remember Don Thornton, he worked for us at the time, and I said, Don, what about you? When did you know you wanted to marry, I think his wife's name was Candace, I can't remember, or Carly, and he was like, I saw her walking across the room, I said, that's gonna be my wife.
No, he saw her walking across, they were at University of Georgia.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Across the lawn, going from one building to the other.
Just saw her walking, and he said, that's gonna be my wife right there. He just knew. Just from watching her walk, she didn't even know him at the time. And so I was like, okay, then Dad, I rest my case. And he was like, oh yeah, you got a point. And so, they're all dating, and I never felt that way about any of them. But as soon as she came around that corner, that happened. The moment it happened, it actually came about what I always thought would happen. So, once the divorce was in the works, we ended up talking for hours on end. At one point, we actually talked for 23 hours straight. And Jennifer had 45 minutes of sleep to go to work. That was it. It was then that I knew I had to tell my parents. I was like, the time has come. And I figured I would tell Dad first. So I asked him to go to lunch, and he knew something was up immediately. And this is where I'll let Dad come into play, because Dad's version of this story is quite good. And the Lord is really great, because I think the Lord orchestrated the way this was told to them, the way the news was broken, perfectly. So we're in the truck. Dad knows something's bothering him.
Let me say this. For the first thing I thought was odd was he asked me if I wanted to go to lunch. Because whenever I went to lunch, he was just automatically in the truck.
Now mooch.
Because I'm paying for the lunch.
Yeah, I gotta make sure Dad buys me lunch.
So I thought, that's a little strange. And then we get in my truck, I'm driving, and he's over there, super quiet, and I'm thinking, there's something going on here. And then he says,
Let me tell you what I said. So this is what I said. I say, Dad, I got a problem. I said, Jennifer at the bank is getting divorced, and I think I'm the reason why. I said it just like that. He doesn't say anything for a good 60 seconds.
I'm just driving.
Just driving.
Now,
And then he goes,
no, let me tell him.
well,
Because
let me
I-
tell you, because then I'm gonna tell you your reaction. So then he goes, son, don't you think she's a little old for you? And I was like, old? She's 5.5 years younger than me.
Now, but you did say that, let me say this. What you have to understand, Jennifer had been gone from that bank for 6 or 8 weeks.
I think it was only like 4 weeks.
But the
max, 2
branch
weeks.
manager, who was older than me,
Her
who had a
name-
son older than James, name was Jennifer.
Yes. So dad instantly thought of the bank manager, Jennifer.
Yeah, so in that 60 seconds, why I'm not saying anything, I'm calm on the outside,
Super calm on the
but
outside.
inside I'm going, oh my God! What has gone wrong? This kid has ran off the rails. He's in love with somebody, and in my mind I'm thinking, how's this gonna play out on holidays? She's older than me. This just can't work out.
Your son's my age.
And at the same time, I'm saying to myself, now your response has got to be level and calm. Because the last thing you want to do is push him further in that direction.
So when he said, don't you think she's a little old for you? I was like, what are you talking? I was like, not that Jennifer. I was like, you idiot, Jennifer from New York. And he was like, and then he was relieved. He's like, oh. He was like,
I thought I was going to pull a truck over.
yeah. He was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
oh
I'm
my
thinking,
gosh.
well, that's a big bullet we dodged.
Yes. So then I went ahead and gave him a quick rundown of what was going on. He said, okay, so now we need to go tell your mother. So we go back and he says, so he calls her on the phone and he says, meet us at the back door of the office, we gotta talk. And so she knew something was up, because she knew we went to lunch. And then when we get there, we pull in and we're getting out of the truck, he goes, follow my lead. I'm like, what do you mean?
I don't know even why I thought of it.
So we go in there. Well, I think it was the Lord.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it was 100% the Lord. So we go in there, and she meets that back door. We go into a little vestibule area, and he goes, your son is about to be a father. So she's like shocked. And she looks at him, and she knows he's always doing these pranks. So she didn't think it was serious, but then she looked at me and knew something was wrong. So then she's like, well, maybe it's true. And she kept looking at it, and she started to get wobbly, like she was gonna pass out.
She did. She
Yeah.
started to pass out.
Yeah.
I taught her.
And then we're like, and I was like, no. I was like, it's not that. And she was like, oh. And so then she was relieved. And so we gave her a real quick rundown, like, 5-minute story. And then so we're like, let's all go talk. And so we came up here to the church. I told them the whole story from start to finish. We talked for several hours. And then Mom told me that she wanted Jennifer to read Created to Be a Helpmeet, which is the book that you ladies have been going through. She said it would do one of two things. It would either convict her, and she would need to go back to her husband, or it would free her to leave him, and she can move on. And now, this whole time, I've been thinking that, my friends would probably be the most supportive group, and that the older folks in the church and my parents would be the least supportive group. I could not have been more wrong. And it was in that moment that I learned we younger people don't know squat because we have not lived life. Everybody in the church has lived. They've gone through things. Many of us here have been married more than once. So it's like you've had experience. And so everybody here at church was so supportive. And
Well, they knew the whole,
they knew the whole
they
story.
knew that there was biblical reasons.
Yes, but even my
She could
friends
be
who knew there were biblical reasons were not supportive at all.
No.
And they actually attacked me and Jennifer hardcore. And we won't belabor that point. But,
But that made me unshield my sword
yes.
in defense. I
So
was very mad.
I told Jennifer that I told my parents and that they wanted to talk to both of us and that Mom wanted her to read this book. So when we met together, my parents at the office, I had told her at Belk that she was going to have to explain this to my parents. So you're going to have to explain this to my parents because this is ridiculous. So being true to my word, I immediately threw her under the bus. So I said, I said, because we're sitting there in mom's two leather wingback chairs. Yeah, we're sitting right there. Dad's in the chair, mom's standing behind. We're sitting there like we're, two kids in the principal's office in trouble.
And Dad goes, is there something
Yeah.
you want to tell us?
Dad goes, is there something you want to tell us? And I said, Jennifer? Just right under the bus. And so, so then we said what was going on, which they knew, of course. And she, throughout that process, Dad had asked her if she knew the Lord, if she knew where she was going to go, if she knew she was going to go to heaven or hell if she were to die that day. And she didn't know. She said she didn't know. And we didn't push anything. But she promised to read the book, which I figured would take her a month because she hates reading. And then while she was reading, I was praying. I prayed that the Lord would do whatever needed to be done. And that meant if that was for her to go back to her husband, that is what she should do. I told him that I would be heartbroken, but I would trust him to heal my broken heart and that I would go on with him no matter what. And I'm telling you, I was one of the most sincere prayers I ever prayed. I said, Lord, if this is not your will, do not let it come to pass. I said, I don't care how miserable I'll be. I said, if it's not your will, I don't want it. And I didn't have to wait long, however, because this woman who doesn't like to read finished the book in 2.5 days.
Over 300 pages.
She knew and she said she knew she was free to leave from the very first chapter. Now, there were still obstacles in front of us. The divorce agreement had to be created and signed, their house had to be sold, and we didn't exactly want to be neighbors with her ex-husband because we all lived in Canton. So we got to praying. We prayed that her husband wouldn't cause problems and would just sign off on the divorce, that their house would sell quickly, and that he would get transferred away from Georgia. So they met with the lawyer on October 30th to sign the papers. He signed them without problems. The papers for divorce were filed with the court on November 5th.
Say what he said.
Well, so when she's like, we're getting divorced, he said, oh good, now I can go to Vegas anytime I want. So he was the party guy. That was his mentality.
Vegas or Miami.
And I think his pride was hurt more than anything.
Yeah, that's what it was.
If he had filed for us, it wouldn't have bothered him a bit.
As a caveat, he came up to the office once.
He did.
From you.
He did.
But Robbie wasn't there, but guess who he did?
I was there, but I was in the building. You were outside.
Guess who he did confront?
Yeah.
Me.
And then I thought he was joking. And I was like, oh snap. But he never did confront me.
No.
He never came back.
Because I looked him dead in the eye, and he knew, I think instinctively, I must have been the father. And if he was there to cause any trouble, it was going to be paid back to him tenfold.
Yeah.
You ever heard of old man strength?
Old man strength. So, all right, and they had just bought this house, in June, wasn't it? July. So this is October. They had a cash offer on that house and closed within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Then he put in a transfer to go to Florida with Costco. He was gone in less than 14 days. It took a year to go from Long Island to Georgia. It took less than 2 weeks to go from Georgia to Florida for him. I mean, it was like the Lord just literally parted the Red Sea and we walked across. So everything was closed out and they were officially divorced on December 5th, 2016. We were married December 23rd, 2016 in a private ceremony. Our entire pre-marriage relationship consisted of 2 months of talking, and that's it. And during that whole time, I wouldn't touch her, I didn't kiss her, I didn't hold hands, I didn't even give her a hug until she was divorced. In fact, whenever we would be talking to each other, I stayed like 3 feet apart. So, I mean, and that's not to say I'm some super Christian, I just really made up my mind to do things the right way. And the Lord helped me with that. Because I'm here to tell you, yes, I was a virgin, but that wasn't all because I was some super Christian either. There was a few times where I said no to the girl. There was a few times that the Lord delivered me from the bad situation I was trying to run into. And I say, thank you, Lord, for protecting me. A funny note on that. I call it my biggest Matrix bullet dodge ever. Was a girl I went to high school with. We never dated. She was my buddy's girlfriend. But anyway, She was always changing phone numbers and jobs and whatever. Her life was in flux. So we were hanging out at Pagan Tim's house. And yes, so he had a bar downstairs and he always had parties. And we called him Pagan Tim because he was a pagan. I mean, he has his own cult essentially now.
You have nothing to do with it.
We don't have anything to do with him anymore. And once he started having people move in and like building a compound, I was like, this is Tim Town. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. And plus he's a bad influence anyway, I didn't need to be around. But anyway, at that time I was still hanging out with him. And so she came with us and, you know, I was like, what are you gonna do for work? Because she was out of a job again. And she was like, I think I'm gonna become a stripper. And I was like, pfft. And this is, you know, this is not good, Robbie, going, do you even know how to
She
strip?
was raised in a Christian home, sort of.
Sort of. I said, do you even know how to strip? That was what I said. And she said, yeah, I'll show you. And I sat there for like, I'm no joke, like good 10 seconds, thinking through what would happen. And I was like, that's got no good consequence. That's bad. I will do something I will regret. And so I was like, you know what? I was like, I don't think that's a good idea. A month later, she calls me because she's pregnant. She slept with a guy at the party. And I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been me. I was like, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for protecting me from myself. So, trust the Lord to protect you, young folks, because He will.
Sometimes you have to be a Joseph, you just flee
Yes.
the situation.
And I did that a couple times too. All right. Now, so an important aspect of the story also is that is Jennifer's salvation story. Because I didn't tell her, but I promised Mom and Dad that I would not marry her until she got saved. So one of the prerequisites for her being with me was that she had to come to church. I never pressured her or told her what to think. I just simply said, you have to come with me. So while she was here, I prayed nonstop that she would give her heart and life to Jesus, and I kept quoting Romans 10:17 to myself and really to the Lord. I said, faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. And so I just trusted the Lord that He would work on her and that He would make a way.
And you didn't tell her
No.
she had to be saved.
No, I never told her that. So, because I didn't want her to make a fake confession. I wanted it to be real. So when she would talk about, you know, getting married or whatever, I just was pushing it, you know, yeah, we'll push it out. Next year. And I never really said anything about a date because I didn't want to commit to something until she really got saved. And so it was during that time that one of my favorite parts of the whole story involves good old Paul Maloney. Jennifer's wonderful husband. Jennifer Maloney's wonderful husband. So Paul and Jennifer, they'd come to church for years. And then for whatever reason, they got out of coming for about a year, I think. I think it was about a year and a half maybe. So I'm telling Jennifer she's got to come to church with us. The very first Sunday she comes to church, Paul and Molly and Marianne, they show up. And what's significant about that is that Paul knew who Jennifer was from the bank. Because he, with his job as the manager, he has to go make deposits, whatever, at the bank. He's doing transactions at the bank. So he talked to her all the time and knew she was married and heard all her stories about moving into the house and everything. So he's like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, Paul. And so this was I guess it was after Thanksgiving.
But it was like the first Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so we were decorating the tree. So while we were decorating the tree, I kind of looked over to him, I was like, this is what's going on. And I gave him like a real quick snapshot. Real quick. And he was like, and I talked to him a little bit more after church. So he's like, oh, okay. And so then, next Sunday comes around, he's not here. Second Sunday, so this is her third Sunday here, we announced our engagement.
That's about 2 weeks before Christmas.
And so I'll never forget, Melanie, she's like, Robbie and Jennifer, come on up, they got an announcement to make. And so I go up there and she says, we're getting engaged. And I will never forget Paul's face. He's sitting out there and he just goes like that. And I did like this, I was like, I don't know what to say. And so poor Jennifer was worried for me. She thought I was like, had lost my, total insanity and had gone off the deep end. And Paul's like, Did Paul say, I think Paul said that he's like, I think it'll be all right or something like that. I can't remember exactly. I remember Paul talking about it, that you were worried about me. But anyway, so how Jennifer actually did get saved is a really neat story, and that's where Dad comes in again.
Well, so that was about, that would have been the first weekend in December, as I recall.
December 19th.
December what?
19th.
Well, so it was like the third week into December. About a week and a half before Christmas, I guess that's what it was. Anyways, I had to run to Bell because I was taking something back. Leah's got a real nice set of Christmas china by Lennox. And there was something I was...
Napkin rings.
Napkin rings, that was it, yeah.
Because we had nicer napkin rings that came with that set. So I was taking them all back. And just out of the blue, I thought, hey, would you want to go to Belk's with me?
Because I was hanging with my buddy Jonathan and
it's about 9 o'clock. Of course, Belk's was staying open to 10 because it's the Christmas shopping season. So we get there and I get my money back and she's looking for something to buy Robbie for Christmas. So we get back to the house at about 10:30. And I just felt prompted to start sharing the gospel with her. I could never repeat this without the Lord doing it because it was the Lord did this. She knew nothing of the Bible. Can you imagine who here, let me put it this way. Can you imagine nobody had ever heard the name Moses, didn't know who Moses was, didn't know who Noah was, never heard of David, knew Jesus only because the world knows that. But knew none of the Bible stories that all of us, even that weren't raised in a true Christian home, just grew up. Because remember when we were kids, around every Easter was what? The Ten Commandments. And we went to vacation Bible school with people. So
it was in the culture,
yes,
predominantly, even
back then. So I literally prayed in my mind. I said, Lord, you're going to have to help me. And I just felt prompted. I started in Genesis 3:15, the fall. I started there. I may have said something that, God created, but I started in the fall. And I went through much of the Old Testament, when I say much, almost every book of the Old Testament, almost every book of the New Testament till I got to Revelation, where there's the great white throne judgment.
Y'all talked for like 2 hours.
2.5 hours out in the driveway.
In the driveway in his
Truck.
truck. Yeah.
And when I got to the end, you could see tears welling up in her eyes. And I said, Jennifer, you don't have to wait. The Bible says today is the day of salvation. Now is the time. I said, do you want to ask Jesus into your heart? And she was shaking then, and she said, yes. And so I kind of let her, and then she went and started praying. And after about 5 minutes, she was done, but you could see the change in her face.
Oh, yeah.
And there was an excitement. She goes, I need to tell Robbie what just happened to me.
Yep. So I come back home and she tells me, and I'm like, this is awesome. Now we can get married.
And Melanie decorated the sanctuary, absolutely. It was like a snowy wedding.
That was the big wedding in January because we got married privately for other reasons.
Yeah. That's right.
Let's just say Jennifer was wearing me down and my willpower was getting worn down. I was like, we're going to get married anyway, let's just do this. And so Mom and Dad married us in a private ceremony here at the church, and then we had the
That's really their wedding.
Yeah, that's what we
December
celebrated.
23rd.
December 23rd, 2016. So ours is a crazy story, and I wouldn't have thought it would have gone down like that in a million years. But as God says in Isaiah 55, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways. So, the Lord works in ways our physical minds don't see. But in the flesh, she was married, had a house, not what I thought how the Lord would bring me a wife, but in the spirit, she was a blank slate, no prior doctrine undue, and she had been prepared by the Holy Spirit to be here in Georgia at the right moment. And what's really interesting about this whole story is that for a year prior to this happening, maybe a little over, Mom had done an entire study of the book of Ruth. For a year, she just said she had felt compelled to look at Ruth. God was preparing us through the book of Ruth for this whole thing to happen. And the parallels are really striking. Ruth was previously married. She was an outsider as a Moabite, so she was never raised with any knowledge of God. It was unlawful to take a Moabitess as a wife. It's commanded in the law. Do not marry, you're not to take any Moabites into the congregation of the people. And she had rejected the faith of her homeland and her parents. When she clave to Naomi, she said, your people will be my people, your God will be my God. Where you go, I will go. Where you die, I will die. And so when Ruth and Naomi moved back to Israel, Ruth just so happened to be gleaning in the field that belonged to Boaz, a kinsman redeemer. Just so happened. Just so happened. There's no coincidences with the Lord.
No.
And just like with Jennifer, she just so happened to get a job at a bank where I frequented. Just so happened. So she cleaved to my God. She left everything she knew behind. And I mean, she was our Ruth. And that's why our daughter is named Isabella Ruth after Jennifer. Even though Jennifer's name is not Ruth, she is our Ruth.
Yes, she is.
Mm-hmm.
And Jennifer always wanted to come to Georgia. God had been calling her to Georgia without her knowing who was calling her. He had her hand upon her before she even knew who he was. And Psalm 37:4 tells us that the Lord will give us the desires of our heart. And just a fun fact, I had a friend that was a hairdresser, still is, and I always joked that we should get married because it would be so convenient to have a hairdresser as a wife. Now, I never really liked her that way, but I always joked about it. I never really thought that as a necessity, though. It was a joke to me. But God actually gave me what I wanted, which is amazing because Jennifer had wanted to be a hairdresser since the time she was a little girl, and that's what she did before she went into banking. She was a hairdresser. And then, we ended up needing somebody to play drums here at the church. She took drum lessons as a kid and knew how to play the drums. And so the Lord is amazing how He fits everything together. And so years ago, right after we were married, we were telling this story to Bill and Maddie Flynn. Maddie said the Lord spoke to her and told her Jennifer was God's to give, not mine to take. And that's what I did. Just as Bathsheba was God's to give at David, not David's to take. Where David took Bathsheba, I received Jennifer.
Yes, amen.
So we screw things up when we don't pray for the Lord to bring us the right spouse. We get impatient. We marry the wrong person. Or, and this probably applies more to the men, simply get married to have sex. I mean, I've met people who did that. And that is a disaster waiting to happen. So, in closing, how does this relate to marriage and sex and God's plan for our lives? A good, godly marriage starts with a good foundation. But that foundation is built prior to ever saying, I do.
Yes.
It starts with waiting until marriage to have sex, like God instituted, because that bond between one another of becoming one flesh is serious business. And the world doesn't understand how serious it is. It is not to be frivolously thrown about. That bond you create can lead you into toxic relationships that you wouldn't normally tolerate. Just as, women who have abusive husbands, the reason they can't leave is because they are bound to him. And the reason why Jennifer couldn't, leave her first boyfriend is because she was bound to him in a spiritual bond through sex. So, it makes you think differently. Outside of marriage, sex will destroy you, but inside your marriage, it creates something beautiful and everlasting. You become one flesh, you draw closer, that bond becomes stronger. And it helps keep you all together through tough times, and it builds you together into one cohesive whole. In Genesis 2:24, the Hebrew word for cleave, which is davak, and I'm sure I'm butchering that, which means to cling, to stick, to join closely, or to cleave, is a verb that conveys a strong attachment, both physically and emotionally. Additionally, the term davakot, which I'm sure I'm butchering that too, refers to the concept of cleaving in the context of communion with God, deriving from the same root. So it's an image, a typology of our relationship to God. It's that close. We have to cleave to Him. And if you want a strong marriage, you can't be too proud to forgive or to be forgiven. Pride will destroy your relationship as fast as infidelity will, 100% of the time. It will. And you can't make an idol out of it. If God is not at the top of your priority list, then everything else will be misplaced and misused. If God is at the top, He will help you align everything to the purpose He's designed it to be. Just as y'all are designed to be a helpmeet, you're created for a purpose. If you're not, as men, if we're looking at our wives as other than a helpmeet, we are not using our wives for what their purpose, what they're meant to be.
You're not leading
You're
them.
not leading, you're misusing her. And if you aren't married, the last thing is to trust the Lord to bring you the right person. If you're married and thinking you might not have chosen correctly, God can fix that problem if you will let Him.
Yes.
So, real quick, Robbie's word to the men. To you single men, women do not exist for you to use. Women were created to complete you. You were designed to have a female counterpart, and you were designed to only need one female counterpart to be your wife. If you engage in premarital sex, it will leave you feeling empty, ashamed, and constantly unsatisfied, because the sin is, by its very nature, not satisfactory, which is why you constantly have to go further, deeper, and more. I know because this is what I was told by everyone that I talked to before I was married. When I went to college, I expected to be made fun of at the time. I just thought that was just going to be, I was preparing myself for it. But what I actually found out was everybody I talked to, they were like, that's amazing, totally keep it up, don't have sex. These are not Christian people.
Yeah.
These are your guys that, I played football with, had class with, they're chasing tail every week. And they're telling me that they wish they hadn't done it. I was floored by that. Couldn't believe it. Most guys wish they had waited. Waiting doesn't mean you'll miss out on fun. Waiting will help you miss out on a whole lot of heartache.
Yes.
Waiting is tough, but the wait will be worth it in the long run. Pray and trust the Lord to bring you the right woman. When you trust the Lord, He will do wondrous things. It may not happen as quickly as you might like, but if you really trust Him, you will have a wonderful life and a wonderful marriage. To the married men, you may be thinking you messed up and married a Hagar when you should have married a Sarah. Do not fret. With God, all things are possible. He can turn your Hagar into a Sarah,
Yes.
but it starts with you.
Yes, amen.
If you better be walking with the Lord like Abraham and not like Lot if you want a Sarah and not a Hagar. God will restore you in your marriage if you will let Him, and if you are happily married, praise God and trust Him to keep it that way. Now, to all the men, whatever you do not look at porn like your life depends on it,
Yes.
because it does. Porn will destroy your soul one image at a time.
Mhm.
It will strip from you every form of decency and replace it with depravity that has no bottom. It will drag you into darkness beyond your imagination until you can't recognize yourself. It will ruin your marriage in a heartbeat and leave you broken and alone. If you're unmarried, give your sex drive over to the Lord. If you're married, ask Him to keep your sex drive exclusively to your wife.
Because that road leads to hell.
Absolutely. And then Jennifer has a word for the women. To all the women here today and listening to this message, talk to your daughters, daughters-in-laws, and granddaughters. Teach them the true meaning of marriage, how God instituted it, how He designed it, how meaningful and beautiful it is to share that bond with someone who you love and the Lord brought you, and how He will love you like Christ loved the church. No one told me about the true biblical meaning of marriage. I grew up not saved and only knew the world's view of sex and marriage. If I could go back, I would wait until marriage, because when you know how God intended the relationship to be between man and wife, that bond when you become one flesh is like no other. This also creates a hedge of protection around your marriage with no prior cracks for the devil to try and cause havoc between the husband and the wife. Now, all the young girls listening, you are fearfully and wonderfully made in the eyes of the Lord. His opinion is the only one that truly matters in life. He will be the one not to break your heart, to create a bad soul tie, to make you feel unwanted. You don't need to fill any missing void prior to marriage in your life, because all it does is taint the true meaning of what God intended with the bond between your husband and Christ. I filled that void for a long time and don't want you to make the same choices I did. And that is it. That's our story. And you know what's wonderful?